Hello and welcome to the Mid-Year ASEP Update. This presentation contains reminders about reporting data in ECOS and information about the mid-year data sets that EPPs will receive at the end of March. This webinar is being presented in an asynchronous way so that you can access it at your convenience. Please note that in this presentation, when we refer to you, we are referring to your Educator Preparation Program, or EPP, since you are here as a representative of your EPP. We have a short agenda today. We will begin by reviewing some requirements and expectations around reporting the data generated by your EPP. We will also provide some reminders and quick tutorials about the mechanics of reporting your data, and then we will wrap it up with information about the mid-year data sets. Please contact your assigned specialist at TEA if you have questions after viewing this information. This presentation is being presented by the TEA Division of Educator Preparation and Certification in collaboration with the Division of Educator Data, Research, and Strategy. Your presenter today is Lori Ayers. Your first contacts at TEA for guidance, assistance, and support regarding processing your data and matters pertaining to state reporting are the Educator Preparation team, including Vanessa Alba, Irene Chacon, Kina Sandlin, Linda Mott, and Lori Ayers. When the EdPrep team needs to phone a friend for those really difficult questions and challenges that we sometimes get from EPPs, we reach out to directors Mark Olafson, Marilyn Cook, and Jeremy Landa. You will hear some acronyms today that will be important for you to know as you are following along with the presentation. First, ECOS, or ECOS, refers to the Educator Certification Online System that houses educator and EPP data for the state. You are most familiar with the ECOS for Entities, which is the green screen your EPP uses to create admission records, grant test approval and recommend certificates for candidates, and report EPP data such as candidate enrollment, clinical experience, and observation data. Second, ASEP, or ASEP, refers to the Accountability System for Educator Preparation. It is also a menu option within the ECOS for Entities green screen. EPP admission data, enrollment data, clinical experience data, and observation data are entered and managed through links on the ASEP menu. The terms ASEP reporting or state reporting are referring to the required data that each EPP must report to the TEA each year by September 15th, and the related activity around entering and submitting that data. Finally, we will touch on new requirements to enter data for your candidates' clinical experiences. So we've added that key term here as well. The term clinical experiences is referring to the supervised experience candidates must complete successfully as part of their training. This includes clinical teaching or an internship for candidates pursuing teacher certification, or a practicum for candidates pursuing certification in non-teacher classes, such as principal or educational diagnostician. As you're working on data collection for EPP activities in 2022-2023, and continuing with your plan for a smooth data submission prior to September 15th, you have some helpful resources available to you. The 2022-2023 Educator Preparation Program Data Reporting Manual is posted on the TEA website. More specifically, you'll find it in the Forms and Documents section on the Program Provider Resources page. This manual has been updated with relevant changes that have emerged since the beginning of the reporting year. You will be receiving mid-year data sets, which we will go over in more detail in just a bit. Also, the help desk is a resource for you. It is easily accessed via the link at the top of the TEA homepage at tea.texas.gov. When you click on the help desk icon, you will be transported to a page full of colorful tiles. Look for the ocean blue tile that says Educator Testing and Preparation Programs. If you click on that tile, you will be given 3 options to route your question to the best department for a response. Choose the option that says Data Reporting. Then just fill out the request form and attach any necessary related documents and submit. The help desk is secure, so you can submit your questions and/or data files to TEA with confidence. Extending our thinking about secure files, we want to remind you that if you must send files with secure data to TEA, please send those files through the help desk, which is secure. Please do not send secure information or file attachments through our email. Sometimes EPPs will think they need to send information to both our email and our help desk, but that is not necessary since the help desk notifies us via email when your help desk ticket is submitted. If we don't respond to your ticket right away, it's because we process tickets in queue on a first come, first served basis. Let's look at a real world example. EPPA is attempting an upload of admission records and the upload keeps failing. EPPA sends a help desk ticket to TEA to ask for assistance identifying any problems with the file that might be causing it to fail on upload. They attach the problematic CSV file to the ticket and submit it for review. This is the correct process for EPPA to follow, and the information in the file remains secure. Then EPPA decides they want to be helpful to TEA, so the EPP emails the file to me. That is the wrong process for EPPA to follow, and the file is now not secure because it came directly to my email. This is a reminder that 19 Texas Administrative Code, or TAC, requires EPPs to report specific types of data each year by September 15th, following the end of that academic year. For your reference, that citation is 19 TAC 229.3E. For more detail about the data that TEA is required to collect and that EPPs are required to report, see 19 TAC 229.3 F1 and the related figure. The data submitted each year by your EPP is important, and there are a lot of different data pieces that you must pull together, ensure are accurate, and submit to the TEA. As such, we know data reporting crunch time in late August and early September can be stressful. So we continue to encourage you to plan at the beginning of the year and implement a process to collect and report data throughout the year. This is important to avoid last-minute problems that may disrupt your EPP's ability to add and review all of your data prior to the September 15 deadline. So just to rephrase in another way, you are encouraged to begin with the end in mind. If you have not started reporting your 22-23 data yet, we strongly encourage you to get started. To reinforce this message, think about the help desk scenario I just described, where the EPP sought assistance from TEA for an admission file that was failing. Imagine if all of the over 100 EPPs across the state wait until the last minute to enter data and need assistance from TEA to help with upload issues. The educator preparation team at TEA is a mighty one and very happy to support our EPPs. However, there may not be enough hours in a day for our specialists to respond to all of your requests for assistance by September 15th. The data submitted by EPPs each year is used for a variety of purposes, such as the consumer information that TEA is required to publish, and EPP accountability calculations that result in the determination of the annual EPP accreditation rating. Data is also provided by TEA to a variety of requesters through public information requests, as well as to other entities and individuals that request and use the data for a variety of reasons. As such, the expectation is that the data and EPP reports must be an accurate representation of the EPP activities. To reinforce the expectation of accuracy, the EPP legal authority signs an attestation of accuracy verifying the data submitted by the EPP each year. This timeline represents the academic year, which is also the reporting year. With respect to state reporting, you can see that we are halfway through that year. The yellow circle at center is our current point in the year. So we have before us as much time as we have behind us for data collection and organizing ourselves for reporting. Now is a great time to pause, self-assess, and realign the EPP's data reporting process and to get going on data entry. TEA will provide some data sets that will help you with that. I'll talk more about those in just a moment. Let's run through a quick overview of the data that is reported for candidates in your EPP. First, the data collection and reporting process begins with candidate admission. Per formal admission requirements in 19 TAC 227.17e and contingency admission requirements in 19 TAC 227.15c, candidate admissions are reported to TEA within 7 calendar days of the formal admission date by creating an admission record for them in ECOS. The admission record is designed to capture the related data that TEA must collect. Admission records are created for every candidate admitted into any program within the EPP. For example, the undergraduate teacher program, the post-bac school counselor program, the alternative certification superintendent program, and the like. The admission record may be created in one of two ways, via the ASEP drop-down menu in your ECOS for Entities green screen. First, by putting all of the required admission data for multiple candidates into a CSV formatted spreadsheet and uploading the file via the Upload Admissions link. Or alternatively, the second option is by using the admission search link to manually create an admission record for an individual candidate. You should add all certificates the candidate is admitted to pursue when creating the admission record. In the upload file, you'll add a row for each certificate. When creating the record manually, you can select up to 4 certificates from the drop-down lists. For example, if you're admitting the candidate for course subjects with STR EC6, and the candidate will also be pursuing certification in special education EC12, you would list both of those certificates in the admission record. The admission record has a very helpful feature in that it automatically creates 2 more records for the admitted candidate. First, an enrollment record is created on the finisher records list with the status populated as other enrolled. For your convenience, that other enrolled status will roll over each year the candidate is enrolled until you change the status to finisher or until the candidate leaves and you remove the candidate from the finisher records list. Second, A test approval record is created for each test that will be required for that candidate's certificate or certificates, and the status is populated as eligible so that the candidate cannot actually test until you are ready to approve the testing. Note that your admission records may be edited using either Admission Search or Maintain Admissions, and you can run a report of all admission records for a given year using the Maintain Admissions link. The reports can be sorted and exported. Here is an example of how this is useful. Let's say your data reporting plan includes you making periodic checks on admission records. You pull a report and sort it by certificate area. You notice there are no admission records for educational diagnostician candidates for the 22-23 year. You know your EdDiag program is an active one, so you reach out to the director of the EdDiag program and request a list of admits so that you can enter their records. Because you are the person who is responsible for data reporting, you are also well versed in the applicable rules around reporting. So you take that opportunity to remind the EdDiag director that you must have their admission data to enter those records for their admitted candidates within the 7 calendar day window. Whether you use the bulk upload feature or create the admission record manually, you will need to have some specific candidate data handy to create the record. You will find the list under the Upload Admissions tab. To create the admission record, you will need candidate identifiers, including the candidate's TEA ID number, first and last name, date of birth, email address, and admission date. You will also be asked to identify the candidate's test approval route, which would either be university-based undergraduate postbac or alternative with prep, or simply alternative with prep if your organization is not a university. You will also need to have the CERT license ID for each certificate sought by the candidate, such as Math 4 through 8 with Special Education Supplemental, and the related roll code, which would, in this example, be 029 for a teacher's certificate. If you create the admission record manually, the test approval route, roll code, and CERT license ID are selected from drop-down lists for your convenience. At the time you create the admission record, you will also report some required admission data for that candidate, which will include the overall GPA, the admission GPA, the number of subject-specific content hours on the candidate's transcript, and the GPA of those hours if the candidate is pursuing a teaching certificate. And finally, you would provide the SAT, ACT, or GRE scores for the candidate if those scores are required for admission into your university. Note that the subject-specific content hours, the content hour GPA, and the SAT, ACT, GRE scores are identified as optional reporting. This is so because they may not be applicable to all candidates. For example, the subject-specific content hours and the related GPA are required to be reported for teacher candidates, but are not required for candidates pursuing non-teacher certificates, such as principal or educational diagnostician. The items on the list on the slide that are marked with an asterisk are those that cannot be edited once you have saved the record. Other fields may be edited by the EPP as needed to accurately and completely report candidate information. If editing one of the non-editable fields becomes necessary, please contact your assigned TEA specialist for assistance. TEA strongly encourages EPPs to require candidates to set up their own Teal accounts and then provide you the TEA ID number to use when creating the admission record. This prevents some potentially problematic issues, such as multiple Teal accounts created for one candidate that will likely, down the road, interfere with that candidate's progress in testing and certification. Note that this pro tip relates to my previous comment about having candidates create their own Teal accounts. We strongly encourage you to adopt a practice that requires the candidate to provide you the TEA ID number. Numerous issues can develop when EPPs assist candidates by creating the Teal account when creating the admission record. Some of our EPPs have figured out how to make this work by requiring the applicant to provide the TEA ID number in the admission application. An electronic application can be set to allow submission only after required fields are complete. When you use the TEA ID number provided by the applicant to create their admission record, you will have added assurance that the record is correct because you will get an error message if the TEA ID number does not match the name of the person you are trying to enter. This helps to avoid issues such as duplicate accounts. Some things to remember about admission records that will facilitate your reporting process are that admission records cannot and should not be deleted unless they are truly created in error. Currently, EPPs can edit admission records manually or via bulk upload, which we call upload to update. The bulk upload option will allow EPPs to upload edits for multiple candidates, similar to the way enrollment status and test approvals can be uploaded using a CSV file via the related upload links in the ASEP menu. And finally, remember that admission records for 22-23 may not be created after August 31st of 23, except for those candidates with admission dates that are in the last week of August 2023. This validation is aligned with the 7-day window for creating admission dates that is required in 19 TAC 227.17e and in 227.15c for contingency admits. Let's move on from admission records and talk a minute about enrollment records. Every candidate in every certification class in your EPP must have an enrollment record on the finisher records list for 22-23 and should have records for any past years of enrollment. Recall that the finisher records list is actually only one list that can be filtered to show candidates with the status of other enrolled or finisher or both. EPPs can also filter their list to review those candidates that were removed during the year. Your finisher records list is accessed via the Maintain Finishers link under the ASEP drop-down menu. It can be exported if needed. As stated earlier, the initial other enrolled record is created for you courtesy of the admission record. Thereafter, though, EPP staff will need to update the enrollment record as needed. For example, you would update the enrollment status of a candidate from other enrolled to finisher or from other enrolled to removed as applicable. Additionally, if the candidate submits a written request to change the certificate sought or to add an additional certificate area, and you approve that change or addition, you would need to update the enrollment record for that candidate to reflect the certificate area changes. You may upload to update the finisher records list via the Upload Finishers link, or you may change a record for one candidate either on your finisher records list or by searching for that candidate using Student Search. EPPs have until ASEP locks on September 15th to update enrollment status for the reporting year. However, your target should be to have everyone accurately represented on the finisher records list by the end of the year, which is August 31st, 2023. A good and practical process to adopt at your EPP is to have all data updated for candidates before you recommend their standard certificates. To reinforce some key reminders for enrollment records on the finisher records list, remember that the records for each candidate must reflect the enrollment status and all certificates sought by the candidate and must be accurate as of the end of the reporting year. Additionally, remember that ASEP locks after the reporting year closes, so data entered through any of the options in the ASEP menu cannot be updated after the close of the reporting year on September 15th. Remember that what happens in 22-23 is reported in 22-23. Also, as many of you have discovered, clinical experience data and observation data for candidates cannot be uploaded unless the candidate is listed on the finisher records list for that reporting year, which means making sure all of the key pieces are in place around admissions and enrollment will facilitate other data reporting as well. Again, in the spirit of report as you go throughout the year, we strongly encourage you to adopt a process that includes finalizing a candidate's data in ASEP early in the year, at least before you recommend the standard certificate for that candidate. We've reviewed admissions data and enrollment data and some reminders for reporting each in ECOS. Clinical experience data will also need to be reported for each candidate completing any portion of the supervised clinical teaching, internship, or practicum in 22-23. Please be sure to report clinical experience data for non-teacher candidates as well as for teacher candidates. Similar to the other records reported in ASEP, the clinical experience data may be reported either manually for an individual using the clinical experience link, or for multiple candidates by populating their data on a CSV file and uploading via the Upload Clinical Experience link. You can also generate a report of the clinical experience data reported to date and use that to follow up with your various programs about providing their data to you. To highlight some key reminders for clinical experience records, first, remember that the candidate must have an admission record and a record on the finisher records list before the clinical experience record can be created. The clinical experience record must be in place to enter an observation record because the two records are linked. And once a clinical experience record is tied to an observation, the clinical experience record cannot be edited or deleted. This is similar functionality to the field supervisor database, where once a field supervisor is tied to an observation, the field supervisor cannot be removed from your database. Note if you completed any observations in 22-23 for a candidate who started the clinical experience in 22-23, but will complete the clinical experience in 23-24, you must create the clinical experience record now in 22-23. That ensures you will be able to enter the observations completed for that candidate in 22-23. Because once ASEP locks, you will not be able to enter observations with dates in 22-23. Now let's consider observation records. Observation data that you generated in 22-23 must be reported for each candidate engaged in clinical teaching, an internship, or practicum, even if that candidate is not finishing that experience during 22-23. This requirement includes teacher candidates and non-teacher candidates. If you do not enter those observations before ASEP locks on September 15th, you will not be able to enter them at all. This functionality is not new and has been in place for years. The EPP reports all formal observations conducted by the field supervisor during 22-23. For each applicable candidate, including any formal observations that are in addition to the minimum number of observations that are required in TAC, and including observations that are conducted face-to-face or virtually. Observations must meet or exceed the minimum for duration and frequency as required for the certificate class of the candidate and the type of assignment. For example, there is a different observation frequency required for a teacher candidate completing 14 weeks of clinical teaching than the frequency that is required for a teacher candidate completing an internship while holding an intern certificate. Additionally, the duration required for each teacher candidate observation is a minimum of 45 minutes. But for non-teacher candidates completing a practicum, there is no duration requirement for any one observation. Instead, there is a total duration of 135 minutes required across 3 observations. Similar to the other records reported in ASEP, the observations may be reported either manually for an individual using the observations link, or for multiple candidates by populating their data on a CSV file and uploading via the Upload Observations link. You may run a report of all observations entered, which is handy as you conduct your periodic reviews of your progress with data entry. When you're reporting observation data for your candidates, you will need to have specific information on hand. You will need to have the first and last name and TEA ID number for both the candidate and the field supervisor that conducted the observation. Names must be spelled correctly as they're listed in ECOS and in your field supervisor database. Remember that your field supervisor must be listed in your field supervisor database, or the EPP will not be able to report observations conducted by that field supervisor. Also, as a reminder, starting this year, virtual observations are allowed to be a portion of a candidate's formal observations. For this reason, you now report observation setting when reporting observations. Please review the updated observation schedule in 19 TAC 228.35G for detail on requirements for conducting virtual observations for teacher candidates. And note that the total number of observations required may change if you complete some of them virtually. Also remember that some of the data you used to enter with your observations, such as the assignment begin and end dates, are now entered with the clinical experience record. The 2 records, observations and clinical experience records, are designed to sync up if the observation date in the observation record is within the assignment begin and end dates you identified in the clinical experience record. So you can add your observation data with confidence. When you are adding your observation data, it is important to remember that all of your candidates' records must be in place in ECOS, or you'll get an error message when you try to add the observation. Error messages disrupt your ability to add data and create records. Trust these error messages, correct the error, and try to add your observation data again. TEA has a few hints that you may find helpful as you are working on reporting your observation data. First, candidates must have an admission record in the CERT role for the certificate the candidate is pursuing. For example, the roll code for teacher is 029, the roll code for principal is 020, and so forth. Also, candidates must have a status on the finisher records list for 22-23. New this year, candidates must have a clinical experience record. And our ever-present, always important reminder is to report all formal observations that occur in the 22-23 year, even if the candidate is not finishing the clinical experience until next year. Report the observations via the ASEP drop-down menu in your ECOS for Entities green screen. Note that the start and end date of the assignment and the effective dates on the certificate may be outside the reporting year, but the observation date must be within the reporting year. Additionally, the observation date must be within the effective dates on the certificate and must be within the assignment start and end dates. Report observations for teacher and non-teacher candidates. To reiterate, the best advice from TEA is for EPPs to upload observations as they occur throughout the year instead of waiting until the last few days of state reporting. That way, all observation data is entered and EPPs have time to troubleshoot any issues that may come up. Note that observations entered this year for a candidate who starts the clinical experience in 22-23 will be attached to the candidate when they finish the clinical experience next year in 23-24. For these candidates, you and TEA will be able to see all observations in 23-24, including those you entered for the candidate in 22-23. As you have just been reminded, there are a lot of moving parts to the EPP data collection and reporting process. As is our frequent message, we encourage you to have a plan for this process that includes collecting and inputting data throughout the year and setting some goals for periodic review and verification of ongoing data collection and reporting. That is sound advice, and if you have not done that yet, it is not too late to start. We are midway through the year, which is a great benchmark point for data collection and reporting. At the very minimum, at this point, you should have most, if not all, of the data entered for your candidates who were admitted in the fall of 22, enrolled in the fall of 22, and/or who started or completed the required clinical experience in fall of 22. If those candidates have been standard certified, you should ideally have all of their data updated in ECOS, including observations and finisher status. Backed by popular demand, TEA will provide EPPs with mid-year data sets that reflect a variety of data that has been reported by the EPP during the first half of the reporting year. EPPs have overall found these data sets to be helpful and provided TEA positive feedback to that effect. TEA has heard you and will be providing those data sets to EPPs again this year. Sometime on March 31st, your EPP legal authority or primary point of contact will receive an email notification that 3 data sets are available for download from a secure share file. The data sets represent data generated and/or reported by your EPP from September 1st, 2022 through March 29th. The first 2 data sets include observations your EPP has reported for all candidates during 22-23 through March 29, and the current test pass rates based on test scores available for your candidates through March 29th. Again, this data is a representation of what is in our system through March 29th, which basically means that if you had a data party on the night of the 29th, or at any point on the 30th or 31st, and entered all of your data at that time, it would not show up in these data sets. As we saw earlier though, you can also run your own reports from ECOS when needed. The third data set should be used for cleanup. This data set will show the EPP the candidates that are currently enrolled with the status of other enrolled on the finisher records list that have rolled over as other enrolled for 5 or more years. If you have candidates who are enrolled with the status of other enrolled and who are no longer active with the EPP, TEA highly encourages you to change their enrollment status to remove before the close of state reporting on September 15, or by the better target date of August 31st, 2023. Also included in the email sent to your legal authority will be a guide to the data sets that describes what each set and tab is and instructions on how to access and download your data sets. It is important to note that the link to access the data will be provided to the legal authority or primary point of contact at your EPP. That individual will then be able to provide the data sets to the appropriate folks on the EPP team. This is a security feature to protect data. So if your role requires you to access these data sets, please reach out to your legal authority or primary contact to do so. Your assigned specialist at TEA can provide you the name of your legal authority or primary contact if needed. As I said, your legal authority or primary point of contact will be given access to your data sets. What that means is that we linked the email address of the legal authority or primary contact to the shared folder containing the data for your EPP. That individual will just need to log in and access the files. I practiced this with the data team to make sure the process was working as expected. The screenshot at left shows the email I received when my unknown email address was linked to a share file folder with a data file. I did not have an account with that email address, so clicking on the link in this notification allowed me to activate an account and set up a password. If your legal authority or primary point of contact for your EPP has not accessed files via share file, he or she will need to activate an account in this manner. Note the information on the notification screenshot is redacted. If I were to remove the redaction, you would see Texas A&M Central Texas. My thanks to Texas A&M Central Texas, unbeknownst to them, for being my practice folder. Note also, though, there was no data in that folder on the day we practiced this, so all is still secure with the TAMU Central data. You can see by the screenshot at right that I can now use my username, which is my email address, and my password to access the files that were shared with me. It should work this way for your legal authority or primary contact as well. Additionally, if your legal authority or primary contact once had an active account but has lived a few days since that time and no longer recalls the password, he or she can use the Forgot Password link on the sign-in page to get a password reset. If you are not the legal authority or primary contact for your EPP, please do not contact TEA to request access to your data set. Please instead reach out to your legal authority or primary contact and ask that individual to provide the data to you. The 3 data sets that you will receive will include the detail on this slide. I'll give you a moment to review the detail before I move on. First and foremost, we hope these data will be helpful to you to review your overall program at this point. Knowing where you are in relation to meeting your accountability standards will help you formulate a plan for the remainder of this reporting year. When you receive the observation data set, the best way to use it is to review the observations you have recorded so far to verify all of them have been recorded. Meeting the performance standard for completion of observations depends on the EPP reporting all observations completed. So remember, leave no observation behind. Additionally, please remember that candidates completing clinical teaching, internship, or practicum in 22-23 must have a clinical experience record, including those who may have finished their experience in fall 2022, such as your fall clinical teachers. The data set that depicts your current pass rates is for your reflection and potential. Keeping an eye on your pass rate for all tests will help you stay on top of curriculum updates and/or modifications to your test readiness requirements that may be needed for specific certificate areas. As mentioned on the previous slide, one key use of data set 3 is to help you with cleanup of your finisher records list. As you are aware, candidates with a status of other enrolled at the end of one reporting year will roll over to the new reporting year automatically. While this is a very helpful feature for record keeping, it does pose a problem when a candidate leaves the EPP unnoticed. That candidate will continue to roll over to a new list every year, even though he or she is no longer actively enrolled. Please take some time to clean up your finisher records list by verifying enrollment status and certificates sought for current candidates and remove or correct enrollment records as needed. Remember that you can upload to update these records in the current unlocked year. Instructions are included in the technical manual. Keep in mind that once you have all data entered accurately, including a finisher records list that accurately reflects the enrollment status and certificate area of each candidate, your EPP legal authority will be able to sign the data verification attestation in September with confidence. We've talked about dataset 3, which will help you stop the roll of dormant enrollment records that are rolling over year to year unnoticed. In the spirit of continuous improvement, let's look to the future now and think about how to keep records clean going forward. As such, let's take a moment and think about your exit policy, which should transparently identify for candidates what will get them dismissed or removed from your EPP. I mention this now because a concrete and specific exit policy can help you and the candidate know when it's time to remove the candidate from the program and the finisher records list. To support the need for concrete exit policies, I would like to share with you some real-world scenarios with names changed to retain anonymity. Here is an example of a candidate call we get frequently at TEA on my team. Susie Smith calls TEA and asks a team member what she needs to do to be admitted into an EPP. TEA reviews her ECOS record and shares with Susie that she is currently enrolled in EPP A and has been continuously enrolled there since 2011. Susie expresses surprise and states that she moved away from a career in education when she could not get a teaching job to complete her internship. And she's been working in a different field for the last 10 years. She decided to return to education when she heard there was a teacher shortage. TEA refers Susie to her EPP to sort it out. Here is another example of a frequently heard scenario. Jack Ayers calls TEA and asks a team member for a transfer form. Because TEA does not issue transfer forms, the team member asks Jack for more information. Jack reveals he is attempting to enroll in an EPP at University B. But the EPP B admissions staff advised he is showing as currently enrolled in University EPP A. Jack identifies he is not enrolled at University A, but he is enrolled in University B. TEA reviews Jack's record and discovers Jack has had an enrollment record with University EPP A for the last 5 years and provides that information to Jack. He responds that he took a couple of years off from school to pursue a career in security and is now attending classes to finish up with University B, which is closer to his home. TEA refers Jack to EPP A for a transfer form and hopefully to remove him from their records. By the way, you've already met Jack Ayers. He's my German Shepherd, who has been very successful in security, but his heart is really in education. Your support team at TEA sees and hears about many of the successes and problems around state reporting each year. From that history, we have come up with some hints that we feel you can implement throughout the year and thus have a smoother reporting experience in September. First, update data throughout the year. ECOS has experienced slowdowns during heavy traffic in August and September. I think everyone on this listening to this presentation understands this, yet each year we get calls about slowdowns in ECOS around state reporting time. Second, request TEA assists and data fixes early if they're needed. TEA staff can provide better support with more time. So bring those issues to us early to get them cleared up quickly. Solving your issues may also help TEA efficiently resolve the same issues for others. Remember, we're all in this together. Third, if you're using the bulk upload processes to input your data, it will help tremendously if you will build in a process step to open the CSV file with Notepad before you attempt the upload. We all know that one stray mark can cause a problem in a CSV file, and stray marks, spacing issues, and missing data are easily identified in the Notepad format. Fourth, consider adopting the practice of entering data for a candidate before recommending the standard certificate for that candidate. Next, watch the EPP newsletter for updates and information about ECOS. If you have not subscribed to the EPP newsletter and need assistance doing so, contact your assigned specialist at TEA. The newsletter is a fantastic resource for EPPs. Additionally, past newsletters are posted on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. And finally, report system issues to TEA staff ASAP. We appreciate your input. The sooner we know about a system issue, the quicker we can either help you correct it or submit a request to IT if necessary to resolve a larger issue. We rely on our users to let us know when the ECOS is not working as it is supposed to. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you think the system is broken in some way. Note, we may ask you for an example of a record that caused the problem so we can investigate the issue and test or submit it to IT. As a reminder, in February, the State Board for Educator Certification, or the ASEP, approved EPP accreditation statuses for 21-22. The accountability system for 22-23 is active, so please remember that complete and accurate data are important to the outcomes for your EPP in 22-23. Additionally, the public-facing ASEP dashboards are live. Before I leave you today, I'm excited to share that IT is working on developing a user interface in ECOS that will allow EPPs to once again report applied data in ECOS. This means when it becomes live, no more applied spreadsheets. I'm pretty sure EPPs will be happy with this update, and I am certain the EdPrep specialist team at TEA is very excited about it. If we are able to get this feature functional by state reporting time in August of this year, we will let you know, and we will provide you training in the ASEP reporting webinar in August. For now, though, please remember to collect the data for all applicants to each of the programs within your EPP, including teacher and non-teacher programs, such as principal and school counselor. Ultimately, you will have to report the applied data either using the spreadsheet or hopefully in a new user interface in ECOS. Thank you so much for viewing this training. I have enjoyed being your presenter today and conveying information and reminders to you that I hope you have found helpful. Please know that TEA appreciates you and your commitment to preparing high-quality educators for Texas. We also appreciate you for taking the time to engage with this information today because we know you are busy. As always, don't hesitate to reach out to your assigned specialist at TEA if you need guidance, clarification, or other assistance from TEA staff. Have a wonderful day.